Hi, 3DMJers. This is Andrea Valdez, and you are listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. Before we dive into today's episode, just wanted to remind everyone to head over to 3dmusclejourney.com and sign up for our Big 3 newsletter. We call it this because, in case you haven't noticed, our team comes up with 3 new pieces of content every week in the form of 2 articles and 1 podcast episode. Rather than remembering to check back with us 3 times a week, we can send it all to you in one single email every Thursday. This weekly digest also includes direct links to any other content that Team 3DMJ coaches are a part of throughout the entirety of the internet. Whether that's guest appearances, interviews, seminars, or courses, you will not miss any of it. So if you like hearing about all the free resources that we have to offer, all the products we sell, all the projects we are a part of, and all the ways you can get discounts, reminders, and early access to them, head over to 3dmusclejourney.com right now and sign up. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. Today, I'm talking to Eric Helms and Jeff Alberts about how to build a training program. In the last episode of the 3DMJ podcast, we talked about all the information we gather from our athletes when they sign up with us. And in this episode, you'll hear us talk about how all of that information is used by the coaches to form each individual athlete's initial training protocol. In essence, we discuss how reported data, inferred data, lifestyle, schedules, previous training history, and early feedback from the athletes kind of shape the way we begin their training protocols under 3D Muscle Journey. And we really hope that you guys like it. So, as always, if you have any feedback for us, leave it at 3dmusclejourney.com under episode number 58. Let's get into it. This is How to Build a Training Program with Eric Helms and Jeff Alberts. Things that training programs depend on. We're going to talk about the semi-obvious stuff. We're going to talk about how we could, if we were working with robots, and then we'll talk about because we're actually working with real humans, right? Is that a good way to go through it?
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it. We don't get too many Android clients these days, but maybe another 20 years.
All Apple. Yeah, we don't. Shouldn't. Okay. So, Eric, if we were looking for #optimal, it'd probably be things in alignment with the muscle and strength pyramids. If we were not to consider much gray area, what's a good way to prioritize our thinking when we build a program?
Right. So if this is for robots, then we would just cut off the bottom of the pyramid called adherence, because Terminators do all the training all the time.
They can adhere to anything.
That's right. The base of the pyramid is adherence, but just assuming that didn't matter, then it goes from VIF, which is volume, intensity, and frequency.
And the I is actually pronounced different in that acronym.
VIF. That's right. Then from there we go to progression, which is kind of your model for progressing forward. Then from there we go to exercise selection, and then we go to rest periods and then tempo. And just as a quick recap to everyone in mind, that's the base of the pyramid is more important, which is not the same as all people create hierarchies. So, yeah.
Okay.
So that was an order of importance.
Right. So with adherence being the most important, I guess we should maybe talk about the non-robot things. Jeff, like off the top of your head, what are some things that commonly affect people's adherence when you're talking to someone for the first time? I guess when you're talking about setting up a program, not like things you'd have to waver throughout the middle, but before you even build it.
Yeah, like one of the very first questions I always ask is kind of what their daily schedule's like.
Yeah.
Work, family, those things, because I want to make sure I build a program around life and not the other way around, just so I could keep the stress levels pretty even keeled or as low as possible.
Right.
So that's one of the most important questions that I usually ask during a Skype consultation. It's first thing, kind of get a feel of someone's schedule.
Okay. Schedule is definitely a big deal. You mentioned something else about a Skype like 5 minutes ago. What was it? During your last Skype that was a...
Oh, yeah, the gentleman trained from home, and the equipment was pretty limited. Like, there wasn't cables or pulleys or anything like that. So it's just kind of the bare basics. So designing a program with what he had, so I had to make that work.
Right.
So there's definitely some limitations there.
Yeah, Jeff talks a lot about tools. You know, like if you've seen his recent blog post, or if you've heard him talk in person, which, you know, that's not a lot of people have, but it's a cool experience. He has a very good perspective on knowledge should become tools, because that you can use in many more situations. So basically, the more creative you are, the more situations you can deal with. Like for example, if you only had a barbell rack and a barbell and plates, could you figure out a way to do a complete bodybuilding program? Some people wouldn't be able to, but I think a savvy person should be able to get a good overall training split. Like, they'd probably like, well, I know how to do rows for back, but what else could I do? Like, well, what if you put the rack up really high and then did chin-ups off the bar as if you had set it up for someone who's like 7 foot tall to squat and just bend your knees? Oh shit, now I can do vertical rowing too. And what am I going to do for calves? Well, I probably wouldn't actually have you do like a standing calf raise with a barbell on your back, fall over. Maybe we just do some blood flow restriction and do like single leg body weight, so it's actually enough of a stimulus. Like, you can figure out a way to if you can figure out a way to train given your circumstances, you can be optimal in the face of many challenges.
Right. So I guess in general, right, the first thing you consider with adherence is like logistics, like that, like time, place. Actually, it's pretty much it in logistics, right? The time and the place that they can. Like how many days per week. Therefore, time
per session that they can dedicate.
Yeah, that's a good question. No doubt.
And then what you had said a little bit ago, Eric, too, is if they can only train, like you said, you had an athlete that trains at 2 different places.
Yeah, that's pretty common. I think for us, coaching bodybuilders and powerlifters, like a lot of bodybuilders and powerlifters are personal trainers as their profession. So I'll run into people who they don't want to train at their commercial gym all the time. Like, they might train people at a studio and they can do some stuff there, but then they need to have their own gym that they go to. Or like, it's easy for them to train after they have clients on certain days, but they're part-time, but they don't want to go back to the gym because there's too much social distraction because it's their workplace. They train at another gym. I've actually had a surprising number of clients who've had to split their sessions between 2 gyms. Then you have to think about basically what are the equipment selections at these 2 gyms and where are they on which given day. So you have to think be a little more savvy, or rather the logistical concerns are a little more when you're in that situation.
Yeah. And like if someone moves in the middle of a program, they don't even know what they have till they're there. Like I have a girl that just moved from Texas to California this past weekend. And so it's like for all your accessories, we're just finishing up a deload. I'm like, take a full week to figure out what you want to change all of them to, as long as they're like the same body part. Because machines are
honestly, that's
different.
One of the reasons why I actually like to have a largely barbell-based program.
Yeah.
Because, well, I think for some people that could be barbells and dumbbells. If you get to a certain level of strength with dumbbells, sometimes that doesn't become an option. Like I got to a point in my pressing where, at least like if I want to do a flat dumbbell press instead of bench, I would only have some gyms where I would be able to do anything except high reps, just because I got too strong,
Yeah, same with Matt. He used to do that.
But you can progress with reps, sets. So there's different ways to progress these sets.
Mm-hmm. You can definitely change your progression style to meet that as well. And there's a ton of things that go into it. Like you may think, like let's say you want to have 2 different horizontal pressing motions in your program, and you wanted to do a barbell and a dumbbell, but they go, well, I only have dumbbells up to something I can do for sets of 10. When you go, oh, okay, then we'll do the high rep work on dumbbells and we'll go heavy on the barbell. Little things like that can. Yeah. It's basically, I think I've talked about this before, that constraints are actually very helpful when you're trying to be a coach or you're trying to figure out your program. The more constraints you're aware of, then it answers questions for you, and you're not left with as many things to figure out, and you can work around those constraints. I think where a lot of coaches go wrong or a lot of athletes too, just programming for themselves, is they put the realities of the situation a lot lower on the list. Like not something stupid like, I'm going to do sets of 5 with dumbbells, and then like they can't because they're too strong. But something like, okay, I have to travel across town the day after work because I want to do squats on Thursday, instead of just changing it. And they just get stressed out and they do it anyway. Like they're still able to do it, but it just doesn't have to be that hard because they think optimal is such a narrow band when there's actually a ton of flexibility in what optimal could be, you know?
Right. Well, I think that's a good, what Jeff said about the dumbbells and what you just elaborated to is a good way for us to like segue into the whole VIF conversation. Because like, okay, so the first thing we need to know is like, what's your lifestyle like? How many times can you go to the gym? And we would be totally fine with like 3+. Like if you can't go to the gym 3 times a week, maybe prep or body. Maybe this is gonna be a difficult sport for you, right? But but I think anything over that is doable. Would y'all agree? I know it's pretty much there in the pyramids, but do y'all agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 3 times per week?
Yeah.
That's very doable.
Yeah. Jeff's like, I do that now. No. Sometimes though.
As much volume as I could handle.
Yeah. And so volume-wise, okay, so what are the questions that you like to ask to determine if they're new and you haven't worked with them before to determine their volume load, I guess?
I like to see where they're at. So like, what are you currently doing? What are your goals? And then are you making progress? Are you plateaued? Or are you, and then how do you feel? Are you constantly in a state of getting re-injured or re-niggled? Or are you totally fine? And then I kind of basically cross-reference that with what I know is probably appropriate for their training age. You know, for the vast majority of people who start up with us, they're like intermediate lifters. So that's probably like, I would probably have them start with, let's say, 10 sets per muscle group per week, spread across 2 to 3 sessions, per muscle group. So that might be 5 sets for each muscle group twice per week to start, or 3 sets, three times a week, one of those being a 4 if I wanted to, or something like that. Right. But most of it actually depends on where they've been and how they're progressing.
Right. And like Jeff talks about a lot too, which I'm sure you'll elaborate on, like you have to set up the baseline first, so then you are your own data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll probably be wrong.
Yeah.
Like whatever you set up initially, it should change, but you have to start somewhere, and it's better to start in the ballpark of correct than the ballpark of made this shit up, you know?
Yeah, just what Eric says is exactly what I do, is basically find out where are they coming from. You know, how much are they training? What's their volume at? Are they recovering well? Are they performing well? Aches, pains, all that kind of stuff. And once you kind of get a sense as to maybe if they're doing too much volume, then okay, let's try to lower it. If they're not doing enough, you think you can improve it and increase it, then let's do it. But like you said, Andrew, it's like, okay, once whatever we set up, that's going to serve as a base. Yeah. And whether it's 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever time frame we develop for this program, we got to run it and then see how it goes. And of course, it's probably going to change. I would say 90% of the time, there's going to be some adjustments that's going to need to happen with it.
Yeah. And then also, I don't know about you guys, but if we're just starting to work with an athlete, whatever you think they can do, you always go with like the lowest that you think could elicit some results rather than the opposite, right? So if there's this band of like, they could be somewhere around here, it's like, always prescribing the low end to start, because if it works, cool. As you talk about, Eric, too, if we do as much volume as needed, but nothing more, or not nothing more, but there's just no reason to give them more room to grow into it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a ton of data on this, but there was a meta-analysis just like recently came out for kind of the same one as that Schoenfeld and Krieger one that came out that looked at the relationship of sets per week to how much hypertrophy you got. Same thing for strength that just came out, and it showed like, doing 11 sets or more per week does increase your strength more than say doing 5 sets per week, but it's a marginal gain. It was an effect size of 0.2, which on an effect size scale, that's a small benefit. So it's like, is doubling the number of sets worth it in the long run to get a marginal improvement? It's something. And maybe if you're, a high level powerlifter or bodybuilder trying to, go from like, I'm placing in the like middling placing at Worlds and I want to crack the top 5, that might be a decision you'd make if you thought it was just a little different so I could put on some more size. But for someone who's early in their career, who's just needs to make progress, I don't know that would make sense to give them 11, like double their volume for an extra, 15%, faster gains, because like, is that going to result in them just getting hurt more frequently or burned out? Or, if they have 3 times as many injuries for, a 25% increase in rate of progress, that's actually not a net increase in the long haul. So you have to think about it from that perspective.
Yeah. And I think, too, people would be surprised, and I was, too, that we still, when we get first-time applicants, especially non-experienced competitors, so if they're just coming to us in their first 1 or 2 prep journeys or whatever, that they actually just need something. Like, you don't even have to increase their work. You just need them, like, on a well spread out structure. Yeah. It's surprising.
A lot of the times it's optimizing what they're already doing. Like, if a lot of the times they've fallen into something that's at least sustainable. They're just not happy with their level of progress, or they're unsure. And if they are recovering and they're progressing, and I look at their program, then I'll be loath to actually increase or decrease volume if the big picture items are already in place. But what I will do is just be like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. You do like hack squats and squats on the same day, and then your other leg day is really easy, and it's like 3 days later. Like, we could spread that out a little better and get you more of a stimulus on both days, instead of making your third squat pattern on the same day, like absolute shit. Like, if you go squat, hack squat, leg press for your first leg day, it's like, well, what are we doing here? And I've seen that, or similar things with moving someone from basically like same muscle group supersets to alternating muscle group supersets. Like, oh, I do bench, and then I do overhead press, and then I do decline press, and then I do chins, rows, and then I do rear delt flies.
So instead of this and this, you just go murk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How about we go bench then row? So then you're a little more recovered by the time then we do overhead press then chin ups. And that makes a measurable improvement in performance on every single exercise after the first 2. For that whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simple shit.
Yeah. I think, like what Jeff says, simple shit. But it's true though. Like, it's I think for a new coach, I was always like not scared to ruin someone, but like a little. I was scared coming on with 3D that people were all going to come to us with this like very complex and sound plan, and we were just going to diet them. And I was surprised / relieved, and now I'm really comfortable in it. But a lot of times it really is just giving someone structure, and then more than anything, because they probably could find some structure online on some random program, but just making them not change for more than 4 weeks at a time. I think just changing too damn off of that. I know that's nothing to do with setting up a plan, but it's more like whether this program is optimal or like 85% optimal. It's more that they have a coach now and they're accountable to me, and they're not going to keep changing it every other cycle.
Yeah.
Well, that too, and also the fact that you're going to help them make the decisions and changing what's appropriate.
Right. And
to me, it's like a lot of the programming it's like we talked about in the beginning, is how do we structure this program to fit the life more so? And how much can we do with training with all the circumstances at any given time? Like, you might write something out now, then 8 weeks later, all of a sudden they have a new job, they have this or that, things change. And maybe, the stress levels are amplified. Now the recovery is not that great because of that. Now performance is that great. So we may have to lower volume down, 8 weeks from now, a lot lower than where it's at, or et cetera, or vice versa, let's say.
Yeah.
Maybe 8 weeks from now, they're they're, instead of doing a 40-hour job, now they're on the couch. They have vacation for the next couple months or whatever. So now you can get after it a little bit more and overreach.
Right.
So just, to me, it's all about, like Eric was talking about earlier, just knowing your tools and then being able to use which tool at a certain time depending on the circumstance. And I think that's something I've gotten good at now as a coach and as an athlete the last few years, just because I have all this knowledge that I've collected and I know how to kind of disperse it when and where.
Right.
I also think from a psychological perspective, I go through this checklist of, all right, where are they? How are they progressing? How are they recovering? And then I decide what I want to change. And there's things where at the start I'm removing things that don't make sense, and then I'm optimizing what's there. But you can't do all of it immediately. If they have the perception and the belief, or they had the prior belief that you do want to do all your pushing exercises back to back to back, because it's the fatigue that is helping them grow. Like being wrecked by the time they get to their flies is what they need to grow. Then you don't just change that. You have to help them understand, well, you're actually reducing the total tension that you can put on your muscle, and it's more about that. And then once they buy in there, then you can start making these changes. So sometimes it'll be changing one thing at a time. And for maybe the first 8-week block that I write someone, it might be a bunch of stuff that I don't actually want. It's just that it's a step in the right direction while I educate them, and while they get more comfortable with it, and while they actually see. A lot of people just need to see the proof in the pudding. Okay, I'm not doing all back to back to back, and then they see their numbers are going up, they feel better. Maybe they even notice that they look fuller, that kind of thing. So, that's harder to notice. But sometimes people need to see that the things you've altered that they believed result in better performance. And then you have a little more free reign for the next program to be a lot closer to what you think makes sense all the way. Yeah. So that's why I'm always scared of my clients giving out their programs. I'm like, that's not actually what I'd write in a perfect world, but
look what Eric's got me doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it goes both ways though too, right? There's people that are terrified of changing what they think has been working thus far because they've just never tried anything different. And then I don't know about y'all, but I've had people too that are like, I just need to mix it up, is the kind of verbiage. I just, it's just not working. I just really feel like we need to do something really different, blah, blah. And you're like, well, I mean, strength training is strength training, right? And then I'll do the illusion of moving a bunch of stuff around when it's really about the same amount of work. You know?
I actually had one guy that was kind of like that. I want to mix it up. So what I did was after every block, I put a free week in there. Yeah. And so it was I would just give him a structure, okay, upper, lower, or whatever, or body part split or whatever. But I'd say you do whatever exercise you want, the number of sets you want to do, and the number, you just go in there and do what you want, free week. Mm-hmm. It was enough to kind of keep him happy. It's okay, it's something different. I'm mixing it up. Now we get back on the structure the following week, back to the game plan.
Yeah.
So things like that is just kind of helped him to keep things going, the sustainability factor. Yeah.
And like I mentioned with that girl who was moving across the country, it was we're doing it because she's moving, but oftentimes if I have someone that could probably progress on this certain structure for the next 6 months to a year, but every couple of 8-week cycles, it's go in, change any accessory you want to, same body part, just type it in for me, remind me what it is, and if we're cool with it, then we can do that. So they're still doing their big movements exactly the same. They're still doing the same number of reps and sets, but if you want to do lateral raises on a machine instead of with a dumbbell, have fun. And for me as an athlete, that was always plenty enough to be okay, of my 6 exercises, at least 4 of them I can totally change every day for the next 16 weeks or whatever. Anyways, so that is a good point, right? We can change a lot without changing our route of progress.
Yeah, and I have different levels of how much change do I need based on the personality of the client. So
yeah.
You have a lot of, I'd say there's people like me who, as long as they're progressing, they're happy.
Jeff, you're the same too. So y'all do the same 6 exercises for a few decades, right? Maybe 9 exercises.
Yeah, I mean, squat, bench. The only reasons I've had to change my exercises around lately is because of like, first it was I can't do shit. I just got surgery, and now it's like, okay, I can do some things. I had surgery 6 weeks ago, and now it's like, oh, I can do everything, like everything. I can actually squat again. This is great, like so. But yeah, like if left to my own devices, and if I never had any injuries or surgeries or anything like that, it would be squat, bench, deadlift, front squat, overhead press, bench row, lat pull down, hamstring curl, calf raise, curl push down.
Only because bodybuilding is coming around. Before it was like none of those extensions curl. Like it was just the barbell movements, right? For like a few years.
Yeah, I wasn't like if you take that and then take the leg curl out and
calves.
Take the but I was still doing calves, just not as frequently as I should have. I didn't want to lose any muscle groups. I didn't actually do any additional isolation movement, but yeah, like if I was just a power lifter, it would be the big three: a row, a pull down, a tricep extension, and an overhead press.
Yeah.
Jeff, and that's it.
Jeff, you have how many movements?
I usually average about 10, anywhere between 9 and 12.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always, like I would say prior to my home gym, I was always upwards of closer to 20.
Right.
So just by going to a home gym, it kind of, okay, now I don't have all this equipment accessible to me. So I had to really kind of condense things down. And I realized like, oh, I could actually keep progressing with just 9 to 12 movements. And
yeah.
I mean, so to me, it's like whenever I have people who are fearful, like if I, let's say, take volume away or like really reduce the number of exercises they're doing, maybe to fit a time constraint or something, there's always that fear of regression or they're not going to progress because I'm taking things away. But it's just that experience level that I have of like, okay, I actually have done this. I've actually condensed my own training way down as far as exercise selection. As long as I'm still, getting the exercise that are give me the bang for my buck, I'm still going to progress.
Yeah.
So it's never a fear. Like people have that fear of like if you take things away, you're going to go backwards. But sometimes it could actually have you going forward because now you're, maybe you're putting more energy into those exercises that you are doing. Maybe there's not as much fatigue in every session, so you're getting better performance with those. And in a sense, sometimes when you take things away, you think, okay, it's a loss of volume. But if you're picking your performance up in those other exercises, well, your volume's going up with those. It's kind of a wash at times.
Yeah. So the main thing I think we're trying to get here is, or not just here, but in the last few minutes would be like, we do consider someone's personality and preferences and psychology from what we know of them up until, which at first I guess is not that much, maybe an hour Skype call or whatever, but you get to find out more and more about people that like, I need to mix it up before they get bored and stale and their performance goes down just out of that. Or if you have there's a lot of people that are just a workhorse that they'll do, like you two guys, or people that have been athletes in other sports too, have no problem doing the same damn thing every day for years on end. And then it's really, usually those people too are like, I don't know if I got like number chasers. Like I was like that. Like I'll nitpick every little number, but I don't want to change exercise because I like seeing it move over time. Says the girl who does a billion exercises now. But when I was just doing bodybuilding, I really liked, I think it takes like 2 or 3 weeks to get into a groove, and then I just want to chase that groove for like a long, long time. But I think we get a good amount of both types of people, and I think that's just something that we consider.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like today, I had like the guy I worked with today on Skype. I could tell his personality was a go-getter. Like, he's an ER doctor, so that tells you right there. Okay, that's not easy to do.
He's done something for a lot of years. Yeah.
So exactly. So I'm like, and he was telling me he's trained 7 days a week,
and in a high-stress environment too.
Yeah, he was training 7 days a week too. He gets up at 5 a.m. to train. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a go-getter. So I already know right away, okay, and he really wasn't making too much progress prior. So it's like, I got to pull this guy back.
Yeah.
So you pick up on these things by talking with someone initially, by asking questions. So I know, okay, let me pull this guy back a little bit. So set him up with a 5-day split instead of a 7. So at least he's got 2 days where he's not weight training.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, can I do cardio on the other days? So it's like right there, I know if I was to pull everything away from him, he's probably not going to follow that. He might do it for a week or two, but eventually he's going to throw something back in there.
Yeah.
So
you can tell, like, how quickly do they start negotiating with you when you make a change?
So I negotiated. I compromised. Okay, I'll tell you what. You can do 1 cardio session, but make it less or miss, nothing too intense. And that way you fill the void on one of those days. Then just give me 1 day of nothing. Like you just, okay, 5 in the morning, I want you to just chill.
Yeah.
So he was cool with that.
Yeah, and I think it's important that negotiation, like you, I used to not do that enough, like with Bert. Or any coach I think because when I was little, I was terrified of my gymnastics coaches, and I was like, "Yep, yes sir, no ma'am, whatever." But even with Bert, just a few years ago, when I would start to feel like shit, and if I felt like I couldn't handle something, there was no way I was going to tell him. And as a coach now, I prefer when an athlete will tell me how they feel about the changes that we're making. That was actually in the podcast we just talked about. Y'all weren't in it, but it was Brad and Bert about like what we want from our athletes, and that's definitely important. Like you said, the one, the true answers to the question, and 2, the feedback when you do want to make that suggestion. How you were like, well, we're going to do 5, and he's like, well, wait. So can I? And that's important because it just shows you that 4 days is probably not an option for a very long time, if ever, for this particular person. Yeah.
I think the way I like to think of it sometimes is given the goals of your client, what do they need to do? And you have to do that, And then after that, you give them as much of what they want without it getting in the way of those needs as you can.
Yeah.
So, that can look very different depending on the client. So if you've got an obese person who just wants to get in shape and get basic general fitness, then you might have them resistance training twice per week and doing a fun sporting event they like, and then maybe doing some stretching after those sessions or something like that. Like, get your basic fitness out of the way. And then what they do in the gym, what rep range, all that stuff, it's like that doesn't matter nearly as much. Like, you can have a ton of flexibility. It can be changed more frequently, less frequently. Completely should match their personality because for them, almost everything's adherence. However, if you've got a power lifter or a bodybuilder who comes to you, it's very rare that they don't want to at least feel like they're covering all the boxes of quote unquote optimal. Yeah. I think what they often don't know is that optimal is a relatively broad window compared to the way people talk about it. Like they're trying to, optimize everything. Like it's got to be perfect, it's like, there's no guarantee perfect is any better or different than 2 more sets or 2 less sets or 1 extra day or 1 less day, that we can't know. And it probably isn't different based on what we do know. Mm-hmm. So, like once we tick our boxes, I try to give the person as much as, or rather not as much, but whatever they want that'll make them happy, so long as it doesn't get in the way.
Right. And that obviously, changes like that shade of gray definitely changes when you get someone that first and they're not competing for 3 or 4 years versus like when we're in prep mode, what you want's pretty irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but like because when you think about what they need is to get on stage in the shredded state, and so whether you want to do another 800 calories of cardio a week versus what you need to do to continue losing weight, like is like you said, it's different.
I think sometimes we have this belief in like the quote unquote evidence-based kind of bodybuilding crew community of that people being people versus the evidence of what we know to be optimal are at odds, right? Mm-hmm. Like if everyone could be a machine, they would make better progress. And I don't, well, whether that's correct or not, I don't know if it's a useful way of thinking about things. I think a more useful way of thinking about it is if you give someone something that they enjoy that is also ticking all those boxes of optimal, it will be better than if they didn't enjoy it.
Right.
So to the coaches who kind of or the thinkers even, who disregard what people like or don't like and just make sure they tick the box of optimal, they're actually going to get suboptimal results because they're not paying attention to that, or they're not thinking of it in that way.
Right. And people have different levels of want. Like, there are many occasions when you have a female that wants to look good naked and they are damn certain they need glute kickbacks, and you're like, okay, sure. You know what I mean? It's just, as long as we also
that's a good example of giving someone something they want that probably won't affect what they need. Like,
or abs.
Exactly. Like, we're doing
crunches.
Deadlifts, we're doing squats, we're even giving a hip thrust, and we have more volume on the lower body and hip extension in general than the upper body. Maybe we're even doing like abduction. We're also doing things in the frontal plane. And then they also want to do kickbacks. And like, for me, the only reason I don't want to write down kickbacks is because I don't want someone going, oh, who do you work with? And they go, oh, Eric Helms. And they go over and do kickbacks, So I will still give it to them because it's
right.
Like, that's the only downside. Like, okay, maybe I'll drop off like a little bit of some set from somewhere else, or I make sure the total volume still makes sense with the kickbacks thrown in there, so long as it's done afterwards. Yeah. It's not like the day before deadlifts or something like that.
It's not going to affect the big picture.
No.
Exactly. It won't get in the way at all, and we can make it an accessory movement, sure, but it's just like, God damn it, like.
Well, and the same, we've had that convo too with like you said, like direct ab training. Like, if you just have someone that's not lean enough and maybe they carry their weight in the middle and they are insistent that they need like 4 to 5 ab exercises per week, and I'm just like, sure, right after cardio, like, or whatever, and not to say that it would do nothing, right? Like you said earlier, it might make a 1% difference over the course of 6 months. I don't know. But if it's going to make them feel better, fuck it. Yeah.
That might be better.
It'll make everything better.
Yeah, it might be better than just the 1% progress. Just the fact that they're happy and they're motivated, right, and they're going to the gym and they're training hard. And so that's a big factor.
And more importantly, it's a pillar of our relationship that I mean, just like with a friend or a boyfriend, like, if you ask me a favor and it's not killing me and my soul, then like, sure, why not? Like, if you want to do these because you will just feel better, and I think as a coach, I would like you to feel better, then, that helps everybody.
Unless you want to be an authoritarian in a coaching relationship, which I don't recommend, then I don't think that's a good way to go at all. Exactly. You want to make sure the person feels like they have a mentor. They're growing,
on their team.
They have agency. Yeah, exactly. You have their back. Not, I have to do it perfectly the way Andrea wants it. Oh shit, I screwed up. Okay, now I'm actually considering lying to her or not telling her. Like, that's the relationship you create when you become too authoritative.
Yeah. You're going to say something, Jeff?
I was going to say this before I said that, but I was going to say that the opposite. Like, sometimes you do have to act as a dictator at times.
Yeah, but always with explanation.
You have to do, but yeah, exactly. You explain it. You get the buy-in, and maybe like there's still hesitancy, but like Eric mentioned earlier, once they start rolling with it and they're seeing the results of it, then that's a reinforcer. Okay, it's actually working now. I fully comprehend what he was saying and the reasons why he was so adamant about making that change.
Yeah.
There's times where you just have to say, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say you also purchase the ability to do that by having a good relationship earlier. So like the things you gave them when it doesn't matter, like in the off season, 10 weeks before you even start the diet, and you're giving them the glute kickbacks and shit like that. But then when you're 3 months out and you're like, Jim, do me a favor, just get this shit done for the next three months because I need it to happen. Like, they're much more willing to do that and be like, yep, I'm going to do what coach says because you created that rapport with the way you gave them what they wanted earlier, So it's like any other relationship, like Andrew was saying. I totally agree with you, Jeff. Like, it's a give and take, but there's times you do have to ask them to give.
I like the gym does glute kickback.
But the way I would like the conversation I always I try to start up every time I meet with a new person is that I want there to be open communication. So I want to hear what's working well. Of course, I want to hear, you want to hear what's good, but you always want to hear when things aren't good. I want to hear what's bad because that way I can compromise and work with someone.
Right.
But I also want that athlete to come up with their own ideas. Like if something's not working and I want to say, okay, it's not working, maybe we try this. And I can either say, yeah, let's try it, see if it works or not. Or I can say, nah, not a good idea. And this is the reasons why.
Yeah.
So that conversation's like initially happens like within the first hour. So it kind of just sets the tone of the expectations both ways. So I can ask for that, that give back.
Yeah. I think a good thing too is always a trial period. Like if they want to do something that I'm like not a huge fan of, I'm like, okay, we can try it for 4 weeks your way. Let me know how that goes, what you did and don't like about it. The one that, has happened a couple times with an athlete. I mean, I did it to Bert too. Was like, I'm an active person. I want to run. Like, I want to run. And like, Berto was like, and you know how we always generally recommend lower intensity because they just got to burn calories. I'm like, I just feel like running. He's like, okay, go ahead and run. I think I ran twice, and I was like, yep, not doing that again until I'm fully fed because it was terrible, And it's happened twice with a couple other, one female and one male on my roster that
just took me a hamstring tear.
Like, well, they're like, I just want to go running a couple times a week. And of course, if we have 1,000 calories of cardio per week and you want 300 of those to be while you're running, that's fine. And then without fail, so far at least, they asked to take it back. And that's perfectly fine. Or I'll just give them. Anyways, we should probably move on. But yeah, that's important that we do what we can for, what have we done? Logistics, preferences, volume spread throughout that amount of time. And then I guess, do we want to talk about like intensity? I guess what you said, Eric, with the guy who was doing all of his heavy compounds on one day.
Yeah, I think that's another. I think intensity is best framed with the constraints, right? So like, bodybuilders have so much leeway with load, you know, so long as you're progressing, in my opinion, like the actual loads, whether you train primarily heavy, light, or moderate, can be like super personal preference. Like I think in a super optimal world, based on what we have, you probably want to make sure you're doing like some heavy work. Like you wouldn't want to do all 15 plus rep work just because you'd have to be training to failure all the time to make it effective, which is not ideal. You have to have a lot of time. Yeah, right. Like you can still make it work. Like I'm working with Luke Johnson right now, head of the SBS Academy, and he does not have the heart or even like the pinky of a powerlifter in him. He is totally and he readily admits it and he owns it. He's like, he loves doing high rep pumpy shit, So like the heaviest I have him go is like sets of 6 to 8 with that's like a couple reps from failure, but everything else is like 8 to 12 to 15 that he does. So and that's absolutely fine, and you can make that work. With the powerlifter, obviously, it's almost the opposite problem. Like they like to go heavy, and so convincing them that maybe we don't need to be doing like sets of 5 on tricep pushdowns, or something.
I need 3 RM curls.
Yeah,
exactly. Like and keep healthy elbows.
Movements are not suited towards going heavy. And we actually want the accessory movements. They're not going to transfer that well from a movement pattern perspective anyway. So this is really just about putting some more meat on your bones so you can make them, you can move more weight. So why don't we use these accessory movements, with higher reps just to reduce like joint stress, because you're getting plenty of joint stress from the heavy ass squats, benches, and deadlifts that you're doing.
That's funny. I didn't know Luke was a volume junkie.
I wouldn't say he's a volume junkie. He's just not a heavy junkie at all.
Okay. He's not a heavy junkie. He's just a light junkie.
He just likes to get a pump.
He's a Bert. He's a pump junkie like Bert.
No pump.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next level, Eric. Adherence, Viv.
Well, before we just straight go through the pyramid, I think it would be useful to talk about quote unquote like average person, Like the reason why I say that is because I think like going back to that whole, like people think there's a very narrow band for what's optimal. Like if we were to look at like data we have, like anywhere from training each muscle group probably 2 to 4 times a week is probably going to have pretty damn similar effects, with so long as you're getting somewhere between, let's say, like 8 to 15 sets per muscle group spread across different exercises. Like there's so many ways to set that up, you know?
Right.
Like that could be 3 full body sessions. That could be 4-day upper lower split. That could be 4 full body sessions with lower volume per session. There's so many ways to do it that I think people look, because there's all these different programs and things out there. And the reason why we don't have like a 3D MJ program. And when people say I'm following Helms' program for the pyramids, I go, no, you're following my template, is because it's just one way to do it. And we don't want people, like Jeff said, we want people to see tools. And even if any time any of us coaches, you know, is part of like a program or talks about a program in a positive light, it's because it meets those criteria in a useful way. But really, we want you to be able to reverse engineer it and look at it and see how it fits into the principles. So like quote unquote average person, if you just responded to whatever the meta-analysis says, like you could follow, like I can think probably like 6 or 7 or 8 different training splits over a microcycle that would result in something within that band of what should be optimal. And that can fit to almost anyone. I've never had a client who, at least who wants to be a competitive bodybuilder or a powerlifter, who's like, my schedule or my life or my desires doesn't allow me to fit within those guidelines.
Yeah.
That's actually never happened. Maybe for a brief period, like I just had a baby, or I just started a new job, or I'm moving, but not like my baseline life means I can only train 2 hours a week. And I'm literally physically busy the other, you know, whatever it is, 180 hours a week or whatever the hell, I don't know, you know?
Yeah. So in summary, anyone can find and build a program that will do them some good for progress over time.
Yeah, you can set up a split that will progress, and it's optimal is just not a point that is very hard to reach. It is, from what we know and what you can actually track and manage, is a zone. It's an area.
Yeah.
So don't sweat the small details. If it would make your life easier to modify your program to fit into it a little better.
Yeah. And I think too, it would be useful for listeners to know, you know, can help elaborate on this too. It's not like we talk to an athlete, right, and we get this information or whatever, and we open up a blank Excel document and go square one, like, actually, yeah, it's not like that. It's like, let me take in all this information, and based on my knowledge / coaching library within my computer, it's like, okay, we'll start with when you said templates, we'll start with this 4-day a week, upper lower, or this person needs, okay, let me go to my 6-day a week programs. We'll start with, and there's like 5 options there. So
it's kind of like, as an analogy, a toolbox. Like every program or template that you have is like a drawer in the toolbox. Now you go, okay, let's pick each tool to kind of custom out these programs.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I do. Is like you have a few templates you're generally working with that fit, you know, the quote unquote optimal criteria.
Yeah.
But then you start tweaking it once you get all the information, background information of this person. You know, what the past history is, what they're currently doing, and that's how you devise it all.
Yeah.
So you got to factor in aches, pains, injuries, all these things that go into building a program.
Right. And I think when people think build a program, though, if we told them, like, we have some basic layouts that we like to use, there's a different way of organizing this, and this, but it's not like it's not from scratch, and it never can be, just the same way you can't unlearn how to, like, look at a plate and know about how much protein's on it, like, we've been doing it long enough. So it's like,
there was a time when it was from scratch.
Yeah.
Like if you're a new coach, unless you have some mentors or stuff like that.
I was going to say, but even then, like when you're brand new, or like not brand new, maybe you're a new coach, but you've been a trainee for a while, and it would be crazy for you to walk in the gym, and I can't think of anyone who's like never seen a training program on a computer somewhere. Like even if you go to bodybuilding.com, there's like 800 12-week programs, and they're all just movements organized. So it's like, how do I want to organize my movements? And then with us as 3D coaches, like we said, every time, like I keep all my athletes' programs every time I build one. And so every person, I can see everything they've done in the past, but beyond that, I save it. This is me personally. I'd actually like to hear how y'all do it. But then I save it in like, I have folders for these are 4-day-a-week programs. These are 6-day-a-week programs. And then within those folders, I have like, here's a bodybuilder, here's a powerlifter, and there'll be templates in there. Not just templates, but like every time I make something for somebody, I save it as a future template.
Same.
Okay. Yeah.
So I like to have 5-day splits, 4-day splits, 6-day splits, percentage-based programs,
versus,
RPE, linear, et cetera, and based off of the person's personality, kind of where they're at with their experience levels, like, okay, what makes the most sense as far as progression, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely
very similar for me. Yeah,
okay.
Very similar for me. I just have probably slightly less organization. I have like a templates folder, and then I have a clients folder, and then the templates, I just type in the search bar like 5-day, 4-day, because I've named them whatever makes sense, and I find it. But yeah, I would say probably I'm confident in saying like 80% of the time when I get somebody, if they're a power lifter, they're going to start with, I'm just typically, if they're like an early stage intermediate, they're going to be benching 3 times a week, deadlifting once, squatting twice. If they're a little more advanced, it's going to be each one of those increased by 1 session per week and spread out differently. Mm-hmm. And most people are going to fall in one of those categories, unless they have a very weird split. And then of course, the more advanced they are, or if you've been working with them for a while, or you're tweaking something that already exists, that changes. But that's probably 3/4 of my powerlifters. They fall into that category.
Yeah.
And then we change it from there. And then for my bodybuilders, it's like I have some full body splits. I have upper lowers, and then I have like that's mostly it.
Well, and I have like a couple like specialization cycles saved. Like this is a chest specialization, and this is a whatever. Yeah. So I think that a few years ago, I would have thought that when I come to 3DMJ, they pick me this special snowflake of a whatever, and they build it from cell one, and it's like, because I used to think that that's how like training went, that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like phase 2. Like if you think of it as being like a sculptor, like, and I could be making this up, some sculptor's going to listen to this and be like, that's not how it works. But like, I'm going to find, let's say, a piece of marble that is in the rough volume of mass of whatever I need to make.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of me going through and finding, okay, you've got 5 days a week to train, and this is the kind of level of volume you're doing. I'm going to choose this. But I may very well like the sets, the reps, and the exercise selection, and then some of what the exact accessory movement is, or even what the primary movement is. I might know, like, here's where I put a horizontal push, but that could be 6 different exercises. That all then is the detail work that turns it into the actual sculpture.
Right. And I guess a question we didn't get there either, but like I'll always ask someone who has experience or like likes heavy lifting, like, what are your big movements right now? Because like you said, there's a lot of bodybuilders that don't front squat. There's a lot of, I mean, if they're a power lifter, you kind of, yeah, that's what it is. But if it's a bodybuilder, some people like to leg press, some only like their barbell, some, so, but like you said, if I go into my database and I'm like, okay, here's a 4-day-a-week, upper, lower, percentage based, 4 big movements, but someone else's 4 big movements might be different than this person. So it doesn't, so it's just like plugging in, basing on conversations or whatever. And I think you develop that. It's just practice, right? Like I couldn't go into Jeff's files. Like if I interviewed someone on Skype, I couldn't go into Jeff's files and find what I want. It's like Jeff knows in his computer and in his toolbox what his shit is. I know the same for me and the same with you for Eric. So it's like, man, as a coach, I think just coaching is the best way to learn. Like I started with my first client with this one program. I'm like, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, a lot of it's like just kind of working on a mathematical puzzle. Like, okay, if I want to get this person to doing, again, we'll talk about average person. If I want to get you to doing 10 sets per muscle group, and I want to choose a main lift that I'm going to test at the end of an 8-week block for a horizontal, vertical push and pull, and then a hip hinge and a squat pattern, how would I organize that if then you tell me, here's my schedule, and here's my time availability for each session, and here's the exercise equipment I have available. And you have to basically fit those two things together until you get something workable. And then after 8 weeks, you go, how did that go? How did you like it? And then what do the actual numbers say? And then you tweak it over time. So that's kind of the process.
Yeah. So if we were I know we talked pretty much mostly like if we're building something from scratch or for a person for the first time, blah, blah, blah. But I like that you brought up, then there's certain benchmarks, right? Every cycle, how do we know that they got better or that it needs to change or what we do need to change? And obviously, like you said, the numbers, I think everyone knows, right? Well, let's say if it's a testing based, because some programs end with a testing week and some don't, right?
True.
So I guess
we had a whole podcast about that.
We did, but that's obvious, right? If they tested at the end, we would know if this. We don't want to say if it worked or not, right? Because if someone's prepping and they're in the last stages and they just didn't test as high, like it's not like the whole program was shit. It's just
right.
At a certain
different layers here that you're talking about.
Was it effective in the context that it was used?
Right.
Did you lose a minimal amount of strength if it's the last 12 weeks of prep? Or if you're in the off season and you're a power lifter, did you make a measurable amount of progress on at least 2 out of 3 of your power lifts?
Right. Or if you're dieting, did you not lose strength? That's awesome.
That's the first thing I said.
Is it? If you're dieting?
Yeah, I said if you're a bodybuilder in the last 12 weeks of prep, did you not lose that much strength?
I don't think that's what you said.
I think he said that.
Okay. I thought you said not you lose muscle mass, not strength.
I said strength, but
all right. Luckily, this is recorded.
Or if you're a power lifter in the off season, at least made progress on 2 out of 3 of your lifts.
Oh shit! I could have sworn you said muscle mass, but both. Okay.
She had a stroke in the middle of this podcast.
If I did, you'd feel really bad.
I would.
If you're listening to this, Eric, never mind. Oh,
I made a stroke face. That's all right.
A stroke face. I can't. Okay. So the layers to that, Jeff, like you said, context of dieting in or out. If they don't have a testing week or a specific, if they don't AMRAP or 1RM, how do you know that this is still a good program for them or not?
I think you just look at the all the lifts in general. Are they moving up in volume? That's one. Are they still performing well, recovering well? That's another one. So if you're prepping, the big thing is managing fatigue. So if your lifts are slightly going down or they're not really moving too much, then maybe we have to look at the fatigue.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have.
The way I program too is, let's say I don't program powerlifters because I'm not a powerlifting coach, but for bodybuilders, I don't really put too many programs with 1 rep max testing at the end. I just don't. For me personally, I just don't feel like it's really not necessary.
No, I never test. I never test the 1RM for.
I like the 2 to 5s.
For your bodybuilders. Yeah, if I'm going to test them.
Yeah.
But kind of like Jeff, like if you have a program where at some point in it they're training near to failure, and it's long enough, they should be hitting PRs.
Yeah.
If they're hitting PRs in week 7. And you've got a testing block in like week 12 or whatever, it's like, yeah, that's useful, but you already know it works, So,
yeah, you can see in the progressions, like, okay, if they're lifting more in week 3 than they were in week 1, or week 3 versus week 12 or whatever, okay, they're progressing. I don't need to have them test.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had some athletes that they want to do that, and usually I'm like, okay, let's do it, but make sure they do it like in a deload week, make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
I just I'm more of a conservative type guy, so I'm like, okay, there's really there's more risk there if we're doing a 1 rep max.
Yeah, I usually do 2 to 5s if they want to test and care about their big 3, even though they're not strict powerlifters.
Yeah, same. I do think you have to give explicit directions on how to progress to bodybuilders, in my experience, because if it's just like keep adding weight to the bar and you don't give explicit directions, they very quickly end up training everything to failure in order to try to progress. Like if you say that the goal is to add more weight to the bar within the confines of this rep scheme, that 8 to 12 that was submaximal for 3 weeks is going to be them grinding out every little rep they can to keep progressing for weeks 5, 6, 7, and that can become problematic. So I think that's probably why I end up. You have to program in such a way to avoid that. So you have to give explicit directions, use RPEs, or have them train submaximally, but semi-close to max towards the end of it, and then test. There's a number of ways to get around it to get that data you need to know whether or not it was successful in all those different layers and contexts that we talked about.
Yeah. I have them highlight cells on their accessories too. Like if this is the first time you've used this weight, make it orange or whatever. So then I can just very quickly, in a sea of yellow, if there's a few oranges, I'm like, okay, we're doing all right, kind of thing.
Nice.
Like that. Thanks.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I thought I've talked about that before. But
maybe.
But thanks.
There's progress outside of the numbers too. So a lot of times I'll say, okay, what we use in weeks 1 through 4, it's like if we're talking accessories, repeat it again in 5 through 8. Because even if you're using the same load, chances are you're going to get more efficient with that load. Mm-hmm. You're going to be performing it a lot better, and that's progress in itself right there.
Yeah. Can you do the same weight and reps at a lower RPE or more technically proficient? Yeah.
And then
that's a good indicator of them going up in weight. Like I remember there was I can't remember where I was reading this article, but it's something about like bodybuilders in like the 40s and 50s. They used to just stick with the same weights for an entire month. Not all of them, but this is one progression strategy I heard. Like they would do the same reps and weights for the entire month, and then the next month they would try to make it easier, and then they progress. And we're talking like guys who are already like competing at Mr. America. Like it's not like they're going to make great progress if they like. Oh my God! If you had just increased the weights for that second month, you would have had gains. But it's like no, these are guys who are the pre-steroid era champions, so they're not making huge gains week to week,
Right. And always like some like if you have someone who is very new, you would expect that if you're using the highlight your cell method, or that there would be a lot of it, and obviously the further along in their journey they are, if they went up on, let's say, of all their They maybe they're Jeff and they have like 9 to 12 exercises. If like 3 of those went up, you're like, sweet. Whereas if they were new, you would expect like 5 or more kind of thing. So
that's actually a really good segue to talk about how to set up a program to allow someone to get an expected level of progress. Like, not hold them back, but also not to give them false hopes. Like, if you were to take a high-level strength athlete and be like, yeah, we got this 4-week block, and I'm expecting big things on week 4. It's like, oh, maybe, like, I don't know if that's realistic,
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, like, if you have a beginner and you have this fixed progression for 4 weeks and they can only add, they have to stay submaximal, and they can only add, 2.5 kilos at most to the bar every week. So then the most progress they can make in 4 weeks is 7.5 kilos on a lift. Shit, man. When I was a beginner, in 4 weeks, I remember I had like 50 pounds to a lift, Yeah. So that's literally holding you back to less than half of what they could have progressed. And maybe you don't want them to make all of that progress because you want to make sure form's good and you want to keep them patient and far from failure and focused on, progression with a great form and really building a base. But I don't know if you wanted to hold them back to 40% of the strength progress they could make either.
Right. So I think it's just the point of it is knowing that you can affect that as a coach. It's not like you throw shit against the wall and you're like, see how this goes. It's like, okay, if I'm thinking about what is not just did shit get better plainly, but like did it get better the amount that I wanted it to? So it's like not just at the end of a block, you're not just seeing like, did this athlete get better? You're also seeing like, how did my coaching go? And that's really important. Like, how were my calls? Did they elicit what I wanted them to make?
That's one of the reasons I like RPE is like you can tell them, yeah, this is a percentage-based program. I want you to start, like that first set, I want you to do 8 reps with 70%. And if that fell within 6 to 8, awesome, don't change the load. But if that was like a 4 RPE, kick that shit up,
Kick
that
it
way.
up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's giving them structure. It's giving them guidance, but you're taking the brakes off the program, completely. So like they're never going to go over 8 RPE, which is probably what you want for someone at that stage. But at the same time, you're not holding them back to, okay, now we're going to add 2.5 kilos next week, no matter what,
Yeah.
So
I like to set people up, like if they're relatively new and not new to a structure, I like to go linear first because there is the structure there. And it could be set up anyway, 2.5, 5 kilo jumps. And you could basically design that how you want. You could have a load increase in every week. You could do it every other week, every third week. So if you feel like this person maybe they're new to training, the form's not really that great. So you go, okay, let's do load increases every other week or every third week. So that way it gives an opportunity to clean form up. So eventually, once you go through linear, 8, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, that shit runs out. Like all of a sudden you're just like, okay, I can't increase load anymore. Then I like to go RPE because now that person has gone through 8 to 16 weeks of linear. They have a good feel of what they can and can't do. So it's an easier transition that I feel like, okay, now you say, okay, RPE 8.5. They kind of know what that feels like because they know what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing as probably
near to failure, so they know what RPE is. Yeah.
So the last year I've been doing that. It's been pretty successful.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of people don't. I mean, we've said a lot of people, but everything goes both ways, right? There are some people that you find over time that this person doesn't really know how to push themselves with heavy weights. And for a bodybuilder, that's not like a career-ending thing. It's just you have to figure out how to work with that. I
think video is really important. I think at least early on in someone's career, at a certain point, like once they've mastered the lifts and you have an idea of where they are as far as their RPEs, and if you've gauged that, okay, they are consistent with their RPE ratings, you can probably tone down the frequency of videos a lot. But especially if they're not a powerlifter and you're not trying to constantly see how can we improve your form or whatever, or reduce injury risk, I don't think you need it as much. But it's really important, like at the stages that Jeff's talking about early on. I might give you a 6 to 8 RPE, but I have no idea what that means really until you send me a picture,
Video.
If you said that first set was a 7 RPE and you then used the same load and failed on your next set and didn't get all 8 reps, that's an indicator. But a video would have told me that a lot earlier. I could have known that much earlier in our coaching career,
Yeah. Some people confuse, I remember when I was personal training, it burns to it hurts, that's pain versus it's supposed to feel like that. The difference between this is working versus I'm injuring my muscle kind of thing for really early. But I remember that at least a couple times with because you personal trained in a gym too, in a Globo gym, yeah, Eric? It's it hurts, I can't do it. And you're like, well, actually, it's supposed to feel a little uncomfortable. It's going to be
right. I remember doing leg extensions with a 65-year-old person. And they're the 10th rep, they're like, I think something's wrong here. And I'm like, nothing's wrong.
Your knee does straighten. It's okay, yeah.
Got the acid pain in my core.
That reminds me of a story. I had a guy, when I worked at the auto plant, one of the guys wanted to work out with me. Okay. So, and that was when I was doing HIIT, Vincer's HIIT.
When you were savage.
But anyways, we're doing seated calf
You ruined
raises.
that guy's future for lifting.
I did. We were doing seated calf raises. Lactic acid burn is big time. And I'm like, come on, one more. And he's like, I can't. Basically, I made him do 2 or 3 more after that. I annihilated him. Poor guy.
Well, and also, too, there's some people that get sore that think they're injured. Anyways, that's a whole different conversation. But there's that, too.
I don't know. I don't know how relevant this is to our audience.
Well, okay, I can spin it into, there's some people that you can push and some that you can't. We've said that a lot of times in a lot of different ways. But not just can they or can't they be pushed physically, but do they know what it's like? Do they know? I tried. Did that even try to fit in? I tried to fit it in there. Does it work?
Well, they're certainly relevant to bodybuilders. Like if you're someone who is a little too conservative with like where you think your RPEs are, that can be problematic. You know, like if you're doing high rep training where like you actually might even be even farther than you think you are, you know, based on what we know about rating RPEs when you're kind of like a little cardiovascular fatigued. That can be something you need to be aware of, like, we need to push this guy harder or find a different approach, or maybe we need to go slightly heavier, you know, or use lower rep ranges so that even though you are staying too far from failure, it shouldn't matter if we still accumulate the volume, you know?
Yeah.
Like
I think it's easy. Sorry. I think it's easy if you RPE, I don't like using with until they're pretty advanced, and I've seen them lift a lot on Instagram and like that. Because I think it's important that everyone knows what like not just testing feels like, but an open-ended, like have at it as much as you can at this certain weight or at this rep range, because I think if
I think training to failure is important.
Yeah.
At some point, so you can learn where that is.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just say you can leave a lot on the table as far as volume. Like if you're one who doesn't truly know what like one rep in the tank is. Yeah. Like I've seen some lifters like that's one in the tank, and I'm like, dude, that's like 4 in the tank.
Yeah.
So
I think
like they're
slow.
shortchanging volume.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Go ahead. Sorry, shortchanging volume.
I was saying, it's vice versa too. So it goes the other way around too. Like for me now, even I'm still like, shit, I'm pushing probably a little too hard here. So I'm like, okay, do I really need, as someone who's been training for over 30 years, do I need to really come this close to failure at this point? Yeah. You know, we're at this stage of my career, probably not. I need to stay healthy. So making myself push, probably not the best thing to do. It's like, okay, let me just, my program needs to be toned down a little bit. So I've actually changed my program and my big list to percentage based to keep me more honest.
I prefer percentage based. I've said that a bunch of times, but I prefer it. Not just as a coach, but I mean, as an athlete, I prefer it because I'll do stupid shit if you don't give me actual assignments, like dumb shit, still to this day. I fuck up my heavy singles like at least 3 times. Like, I can't be failing at that shit. It's stupid, but I'll do it pretty often, at least a couple times a month. I get excited,
and I think even that's another place you can still make something optimal despite, like, we'll call it a personality flaw. You know, someone who is either well, because you can have on either side. Like, if we just want to see people who, like, under or overrate their RPEs. Like, if someone is always sandbagging it, okay, that's an easy fix. I'm going to give you moderate and low rep sets, but more sets, you know? Like if you think that was, you know, 5 at a 9, it was actually 5 at a 6, that's okay. That's still like using like an 8 or 9 RM load. Like all that volume was probably still effective. And and I tell you rest until you're ready to go again. You probably won't need that much rest. So you getting 5 sets done would be take just as much time as doing 4 and getting, you know, a heavier load or actually getting those 3 extra reps you didn't know you had. And on the other side of it, if someone is like you, Andrea, where they push those RPEs way too high, then maybe I let them get that animal out on their bicep curls and calf raises or last set of the day for a muscle group, but I give them percentages for their main lifts that I know they'll be able to do, but should be challenging enough to keep them happy, you know?
Yeah, good point. You said a couple things there that I was thinking we were pretty much done, but I don't know. Maybe a couple statements or two about it would be like exercise selection and rest periods when we're building a program. Unless someone asks me, I don't prescribe rest periods more or less. I don't touch them.
It's interesting. The higher you get up in the pyramid, it's more about preventing them from screwing themselves over. Yeah. You know, so like I think Brad in the deload handbook that we're working on, he talked about how one of his clients was getting beat up in his deload weeks consistently, and he couldn't figure out why. And he finally asked him, and he started doing like tempo training during his deload, so that the weight he was prescribed that was less, and the less volume was harder. So like, okay, I know I can do 110 for 15 reps, and you told me to do 100 for 10. that's fine. I'll just make each rep last 8 seconds, you know?
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, I'm really sore for my deload week. Am I doing something wrong? And Brad was like, well, are you doing something wrong? and lo and behold, he was, you know? So, so like that's some of those things you just being like, oh, it doesn't matter, so I won't prescribe it. If your client doesn't know that it doesn't matter and they're messing with it, then it could get in the way. Like when I see people, like when I see for certain exercises, like if their reps drop off a whole lot when they're allowed to go near to failure, but they're not supposed to go to failure, like you'll see someone, like I'll tell you, all right, I want you to choose a load that you can do 3 sets within the 8 to 12 rep range, but don't go to failure. If it goes like 12, 8, load drop 8 again, I'm like, okay, that's not, you're not resting long enough, or you're not actually, you know, following those guidelines. And like that's often where I pick up on people just not resting long enough. And they're like, yeah.
That's it though. Y'all pick up on it, right? Like I'm saying with any athletes I have right now, I don't immediately go and like, and I want you resting, blah, 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 blah. It's like usually they'll ask me about it or something will come up that makes me question it. But I don't ever, if the conversation's about like when you give a program, I don't ever say like, I want you resting this. I just say like, as needed to complete the assignment.
Yeah, that's what I say too. But I think some people, they'll see what they can get. Like if, you know, some people just like to feel like it's hard or like to feel like they're working out, especially if they come from a different background, or if they used to be a cardio bunny, or if they used to be in a CrossFit or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like if you tell them rest as long as needed, they'll think, all right, I'll rest as long as I can actually barely complete what I'm supposed to do, not resting long until I can perform as best as I could, you know. Right. That's when you got to start being like, all right, give me at least 3 minutes on your compounds and at least 2 minutes on your ISOs, or alternate a push and a pull and give me at least a minute. Yeah.
If someone says like, I feel like I'm in the gym a long time, I'll just start supersetting like opposing muscle groups. Yep. Like you said, I'll be like, well then instead of like, I'll take the push day and the pull day and put half of it together over here and half of it together over here, and then just have them alternate. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't like to waste time either. Like I'll do sets of calf raises between sets of squats. Or deadlifts more often actually, or I don't do any upper body work that's not push pull, except for bench. If I'm doing bench heavy, I don't want to be tired at all. Like if it's a powerlifting kind of day, but even then, I sometimes feel like it doesn't negatively affect me. So.
Go ahead, Jeff. You're gonna say something?
I was just gonna say that this happens to me personally, but basically it's like if you see like, okay, 100 pounds. 8 reps first set, 7 the second, 8 the third, then you know, okay, that second set, probably you didn't get enough rest there.
Yeah, easy stuff like that. Yeah.
Many occasions with myself, so it's like, it happens all the time. Even with my wife now, she's like, always wants to do bam, 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 set after set. Like, she'll do a set of curls and like 20 seconds later, she's like, I'm ready to go again. I'm like, no, you're not. I make her rest. Just so she could get more output in that second set and third set.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do your push downs. like don't doing curls again yet.
Yeah. And then what was an exercise selection? I don't know if we want to. Do we go down that hole in this? Keep it symmetrical, unless you're in a specialization cycle for some reason, which is a whole nother podcast. But I mean,
I think it's useful. We're talking about how to program, right? So I think it's useful to think about. All right, I'll start even further back from that. A lot of like bodybuilding programming lore comes from like these exercises are good for this development, rather than let me think about movement patterns that exercises can be grouped into, and then what muscle groups are trained by them. So like you might hear somebody like kind of old school thinking like a hamstring curl and an RDL are the same thing. And I'm like, not really. You know, like one is a loaded hip extension, and like it's not just a hamstring exercise, you know?
Oh, like, okay. I was like, who says that? Yeah,
well,
okay.
Like if you look at like typical magazine protocols from back in the day when people read magazines, like it would be like they would use those interchangeably in the spot on leg day, you know, that kind of thing. Or other shit like that. Like you'd see all kinds of stuff like that. Or you'd see a pullover in there, and then one person would decide that was for chest, another would decide it was for lats, or another person decided it was a rib cage expansion or whatever, you know. But
man, I'm glad I didn't read that shit.
But But yeah, or like we just kind of associate movements with a very specific outcome when it's like, okay, let's put incline, decline, flat, dumbbell and bench and machine all in the same category as a horizontal push, right?
Yeah.
And then anything pressing over your head, that's a vertical push. Any kind of pull down, pull up, or even high row is vertical. And then every other kind of row you can think of, that's horizontal row. And then what can be in like our squat pattern or hip hinge pattern. And then so that means like your lunge, your front squat, your back squat, your leg press, your hack squat are all in the same category, and RDL, sumo, conventional, all those things are in the same category. And then when you think of it that way, and you think about, okay, these are all training similar muscle groups, and it's more like, what can I do that's pain-free? I have good skill with, so I'm at low risk of being injured in the future, that I have access to and that I enjoy, and that should dictate it. Not, I don't know, I heard this guru say that the leg press is better for vas lateralis development. It's like, well, fuck that. Like if that leg press always hurts your lower back, don't do it.
Exactly.
Do something else.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that took care of that. And
then powerlifters is really easy. Do as much of the big three as you can. If one is hurting you a lot, though, swap it out for something else to get volume, and then do the minimum amount you need to progress on it. Which I think a lot of actually powerlifters get wrong. They'll be like, squat hurts me, but I got to squat. And to be the best squatter, I have to squat all the time. And it's like, well, maybe like a single at an 8 and a single at a 9 earlier and later in the week during your last final period before you compete, and then a crap ton of leg press is not going to get you hurt, but you'll still progress. Like, doesn't matter what on paper would have resulted in a bigger squat because you're not on paper.
Yeah, even with my experience level, like I still stubborn. Like a lot of people will do this, like, oh, I have to squat or I have to deadlift because it's quote unquote optimal or it's better. And that was I was fearful of this prep of like losing leg size because if I have these lower back issues, hip issues, so I'm like, I got to keep squatting. I got to keep this leg size. And finally, you guys are just like, Jeff, try front squat. And I'm like, why am I being so fucking hard-headed? Because in the past, I hate front squat. But I'm like, you know what? Don't be a dipshit. Just basically be open-minded and try it. So now I'm like in love with front squat, like adamant about making that my bitch. Did I just say that? Yeah, I did.
You just said you're making front squat your bitch.
I'm gonna tell Susanna.
But it's like, you guys were right though. It's like less forgiving on my hips. I can do it with less pain. And I'm progressing on it. Now that I got the technical skill with it, now I'm starting to add load. Mm-hmm. So now I'm progressing. So it's like, again, the exercise, like you're just saying, it's like pick exercises that you can do safely, they're effective, and you enjoy, and roll with it. And that's how you keep making progress. I think people just get really stubborn on, quote unquote, the best exercise that sometimes it's actually not the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the best for you. In fact, it's harmful. Yeah, I've talked a lot of bodybuilders out of like deadlifts in their programs, like conventional deadlifts or just straight up deadlifts. Like they often end up doing RDL or
RDL and leg press.
Nothing wrong with that. It really isn't,
Yeah. All right, I think we did a good job. Is there anything else y'all feel like we could have touched on? That's how you build a program. We did it.
Yay!
Okay, talk to y'all next week. See ya.
Hey everybody, it's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.